Welcome to All Things Amazing. Today, we journey along one of the most historically and geopolitically significant rivers in the world, the Blue Nile. Stretching across the heart of East Africa, the Blue Nile has shaped the civilizations that surround it for millennia. But as countries grow, so do their needs, and with that comes tension. Let's explore the importance of this mighty river and the complex relationships between upstream and downstream nations. Let's dive deeper into the geopolitical struggle. The terms upstream and downstream describe where a country lies in relation to a river's flow. In the case of the Blue Nile, Ethiopia is upstream, while Sudan and Egypt are downstream. For upstream nations, control over the river offers a strategic advantage. They control the source of the water. However, for downstream countries, access to that water is essential for agriculture, drinking water, and power generation. Take Ethiopia, for example. As the source of the Blue Nile, it's pursuing ambitious projects like the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, GERD. Ethiopia sees this dam as a game-changer for its economy. It can generate hydroelectric power and boost development. However, for downstream countries like Egypt and Sudan, the GERD represents a potential threat. Egypt, in particular, is heavily reliant on the Nile. About 90% of its freshwater comes from the Nile, and without it, Egypt's agriculture and drinking water supplies would collapse. The same is true for parts of Sudan, where the Blue Nile provides vital irrigation for crops. But with Ethiopia's GERD, Egypt fears that its water supply could be jeopardized. Even though Ethiopia insists the dam won't significantly reduce water flow downstream, Egypt remains concerned about the potential for droughts or reduced access during dry years. This has led to years of diplomatic negotiations, with both Egypt and Sudan pushing for a formal agreement on how much water Ethiopia can hold back. However, finding common ground has proven to be difficult. Water rights along the Nile have long been a contentious issue. The 1929 Nile Waters Agreement, signed by colonial powers, gave Egypt a near monopoly over the river's water. A subsequent 1959 agreement between Egypt and Sudan allocated the majority of the Nile's flow to these two countries, leaving out Ethiopia and other upstream nations. In the modern era, Ethiopia and other upstream nations have argued that these agreements are outdated and unfair. Ethiopia's construction of the GERD is a clear challenge to Egypt's historical dominance over the Nile's waters. Ethiopia insists that the dam will benefit the region, providing power not just for itself, but for Sudan and beyond. But downstream nations remain cautious. Hold on, the Blue Nile isn't just a lifeline for civilizations, it's steeped in myths and mysteries. Let's dive deep into the mystical side of this legendary river. Beyond its importance to survival, the Blue Nile has a history full of ancient legends. Join us on a journey to uncover the fascinating myths that surround this iconic waterway. One of the earliest myths about the Blue Nile is that it was considered a gift from the gods. Ancient Egyptians who revered the Nile believed that the Blue Nile was sent from the heavens by Hapi, the god of fertility and the Nile's waters. The river was seen as a life-giving force, and its annual flooding was believed to be a divine blessing. This natural event brought fertile soil, making the land around it bloom with crops, which was essential for survival in ancient Egypt. In ancient times, offerings were made to Hapi to ensure the river would flood as expected and bring prosperity. For centuries, the source of the Blue Nile was shrouded in mystery. Many ancient explorers believed it originated from a hidden or mystical land, a place only known to the gods. Greek historians like Herodotus speculated that the Blue Nile's source was a secret guarded by divine powers, making it nearly impossible for mortals to discover. The river's hidden origins were considered sacred and untouchable by human hands. It wasn't until the 17th century that the true source, Lake Tana in Ethiopia, was confirmed, debunking the ancient myths. But the allure of the mysterious source continues to inspire tales today. The ancient Egyptians not only saw the Nile as a source of life but also as a pathway to the afterlife. According to myth, the Blue Nile along with the White Nile was believed to be a mirror of the celestial river flowing through the heavens. It was said that when a person passed away, their soul would follow the course of the Blue Nile toward the afterlife, much like the river flows northward toward the Mediterranean Sea. In this belief system, the river wasn't just a physical entity, it was a spiritual guide, leading souls to eternal peace. This connection made the Nile even more sacred to those who lived by its banks. In Ethiopia, the Blue Nile is woven into the country's spiritual and religious fabric. One of the most famous legends is that of King Lalibela, a 12th century king who was said to have carved the famous rock-hewn churches of Lalibela with divine guidance. The Blue Nile, according to legend, was blessed by these divine acts and is thought to hold spiritual powers. Many Ethiopians still believe that the waters of the Blue Nile possess healing properties. Pilgrims come from all over to bathe in its sacred waters, hoping to receive blessings and spiritual cleansing. Another fascinating myth is that of hidden treasures buried along the banks of the Blue Nile. Local folklore tells of ancient kings and queens who buried their wealth near the river to protect it from invaders. Over the centuries, treasure hunters have sought these legendary riches, though none have been found. While the Blue Nile's treasures may never have been discovered, the myth continues to captivate the imaginations of adventurers. Finally, there are prophecies tied to the Blue Nile. In some local Ethiopian traditions, it's believed that the river will one day dry up, signaling a time of great change or turmoil in the region. While this is just a myth, the prophecy has made many reflect on how climate change and human intervention could affect the river's future. Whether as a divine gift, a hidden treasure, or a mystical pathway, the Blue Nile has inspired countless myths over the centuries. Its waters continue to flow, but its legends remain eternal. So, what does the future hold for the Blue Nile and the nations that rely on it? The path forward depends on cooperation and compromise. There is great potential for regional growth if Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt can find common ground. Thank you for watching All Things Amazing. If you enjoyed this exploration of the Blue Nile's myths, make sure to like, subscribe, and join us for more incredible stories from around the world.